you've got to get around other people going through what you're going through.
Yeah.
And that's really the sense of what the best circles or small groups are, like-minded people going through similar things in life. And you got young kids, find other people with young kids.
Yeah, that's one of the the strong tenets of BKF is our goal and mission was that every blended family would have a community group to belong to.
We know ourselves.
Yeah.
The enemy reminds us of why we probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And speaking to, the people sitting right there that you're like, I shouldn't lead a group. You're because you're saying that, you probably should, because it's not about you.
There are people who have reserved spots in heaven that are waiting for you to say yes to them.
Oh,
like
yes.
God's sitting up there going, man, I got a spot for this guy. And I know you're going to say yes to this. But if you'll say yes now, this spot,
Getting fired up,
this spot.
Your blended family has a 100% chance of success when you do it God's way. We're Blended Kingdom Families, and we want to provide biblical resources to heal and restore families with a message of hope for the next generation.
Hey guys, welcome to the BKF Podcast. We are excited to have you back with us. If you haven't already, and most of you have, but you may be new. So take an opportunity, subscribe to the podcast. You'll be notified every single week when we drop a new episode. And you can always like, share, leave us comments. We would love to hear from you. Today, I'm excited. It's an all dudes podcast today. Vanessa is not with us. So if you're wondering where the good looking one is, she's probably doing something else. But I get to hang out with Wade Smith today. And Wade is a really, really great guy. And I'm going to tell you how I know Wade and all the great things. So Wade is the, I'm trying to get your exact title. Executive pastor for Victory Church for the Edmond campus in Oklahoma and also my home campus here in Grapevine, Texas. And he directs the initiatives, implements all campus level, as well as helping directional leadership for Victory overall. And he just really has a passion for helping people who are hurting and helping them find hope in Christ, which it's like the ultimate medicine. And I'm so excited to encourage other people about this process. 20 years in ministry. So we're excited to have you.
Well, I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit more about you, your family. All that kind of good stuff.
So, it's the old pastor joke. I married way up. But I actually did. Some pastors lie about that. I actually did marry up. I've got 4 kids. So oldest boy is 16. My girl is 14, just turned 14. And then I've got an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old boy. So
we should stop and pray for you.
My girl's second, and so we've got her well protected.
I
need a lot of prayers,
brothers,
man. And you are a counselor, so afterwards I could use some advice.
Well, anybody, and I know everybody who watches our podcast is parented in some way. So all you parents, first of all, give yourself grace. Because kids,
it's hard. I mean, pastoring is one thing, but when you get home and you've got kids and you're just dad to them, they don't listen to me the same way that people at the church do. So
no, they don't. And the older they get, it seems like the less they want to listen
That's the truth, man.
So even pastors struggle in this area. And they pray all the time. Well, Well, I have had the opportunity of getting to know Wade over the last several years, and obviously we share an immense love and respect for John Chastain, our senior pastor, who is a wonderful, wonderful man who we are just grateful to know. But today we're going to dive into some topics here, and I love that this is a all guys podcast today, because in a lot of ways we're talking to the men of the house, but we're also encouraging everybody. And I want to talk a lot about community and why church community is so important. I will tell you, one of the biggest blessings that I have experienced really in my entire life, and I will say this, not because I'm proud of this statistic, but I am glad I got there, is over the last 3 to 4 years, being so intentional about surrounding myself with godly men and godly friends and godly couple friends. And the concept of community has never been more important than it is to me today.
Oh, I agree with that.
So as you've been a pastor for 20 years, one, why is community so important?
It's interesting. I think community's always been really important to church. I think we find ourselves at a really unique spot in church history where in days past you had the church on every corner. Typically people went to the church in their neighborhood or just surrounding. Okay. You had potlucks afterwards.
That's right.
You hung out with your neighbors. It was the community event in a sense on a Sunday. Since then, over the last several years, you've seen this model kind of shift, right? And so it's very much content driven. Yeah. There's large churches. We're a large church. Yeah. And so you can come, you can sit in the back. Yeah. You can, and to some degree, that's actually really healthy. That you can, there's some anonymity to experiencing it maybe for the first or second time. But at some point, if you don't step into community, I believe we say at Victory Church we grow best in circles. Yeah. So circles are our small groups. I think at some point you can't grow. And so what I said when I say there's been this shift. It shifted from you found great community in churches, but the teaching was dependent upon your local church. And it may be good, it may be bad, it may be they were preparing 3 messages a week. So only one of those is probably fairly good. Yeah. Now you can go online, you can catch a podcast, you can catch some of the best content in the world, no matter where you are.
But you can't replace community.
But you can't find community.
Yeah. I find it very odd. I made this joke to a friend of mine the other day. You know, when I was growing up, I don't know if I'm sure you're way the same way. Like, it wasn't uncommon to be like, I'm going to the neighbor's house and no call, no text, no like I'm coming. It was like a knock on the door, like, hey, how are you guys doing? Yeah. I brought a a dish. Let's sit down and eat. Yeah. If that happened today,
now
I'd be like,
I've got a video doorbell. Yeah. That is so I can determine if I'm answering the door or not.
Like the doorbell rings and you're like, who's there?
100%.
So we are absent of community, and then we have this the church, which provides this opportunity. But I don't know the statistic on this, but what do you think the stat is on the number of community, people who are members of a church, but actually belong in some level of small community?
It's very small. I couldn't give you the percentage, but it's small. And it's one of the things we face most as pastors is I think that most people will recognize the importance of it. Yeah. They need it. The challenge we have as pastors is making it. I tell people all the time if they want to start a circle, I say, listen, don't make that an indefinite circle. Yeah. Like it's going forever because people feel like they're signing their life away. Yeah. I tell people all the time, hey, do it 5 weeks, do 6 weeks, because if you can just get people in community for 5 weeks, they'll understand the importance of it. Yeah. They'll make great friendships. And then down the road, they're meeting indefinitely, but they just didn't say that at the beginning. Yeah. Because I think there's this, and you said it earlier, it's really the men. Yeah. Our wives want community. I mean, how many times, and I've been here, I'm a pastor, okay? And there's been times that my wife has had to drag me to a circle or to a small group.
Well, I remember growing up, I grew up in a small town in Texas. My small group was church softball. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's where the men would find enjoyment. Yep. It's like, if you say to a guy like, hey, we're going to go to this small group and talk about our feelings. I'm pretty sure most of the guys are going to be like, you know what, I'm busy that day. I've got it's difficult.
No, you're right. You're right. And honestly, what you just said about softball groups, they're some of our best groups. I mean, going to play golf together. Love it. There's something about when you get guys doing something together later on when they need something, it's like, I'll call Scott. I need some prayer.
That is 100% right. Men bond through activities. Yeah. They don't necessarily. I think it's not. Doesn't never happen, but I think a lot of men like that physical activity. Yeah. That's why cycling groups or softball groups or golf groups are so important to building that community. And I also think that our wives are the connectors too.
They are.
So they're the ones who, I as I counsel people, I'm like, who are your friends? Who is your community? Who is your it group? Yeah, it's good. Who are our people? Who is our village? I mean, whatever you want to say. But wives have such an important concept of just kind of like, they connect with other women so easily. Yep. And it's connecting their husbands together and then all of a sudden keeping the arrangements of group things that are going on.
Right. Yeah. So 100%. Yeah.
But you got to be willing to try.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, I'll have guys sit in my office. I told a guy about blending kingdom families just the other day. And he's raising a 16-year-old girl, and, mom and dad are raising them. It's different in each home, right? And so I said, listen, you've got to get in a blended kingdom family circle. Is that what you call them? Or
groups or community groups or however.
Group,
we have tons of them all across the nation that churches
I told him the other day, I'm like, listen, you've got to get around other people going through what you're going through.
Yeah.
And that's really the sense of what the best circles or small groups are like-minded people going through similar things in life. If you got young kids, find other people with young kids.
Yeah.
If you're older and you're out, your kids are out of the house, find other people because they have a lot of time on their hands. So they need that time as well. So find people like you.
I love that's one of the the strong tenets of BKF is our goal and mission was that every blended family would have a community group to belong to. And so when we wrote Blended and Redeemed, we wrote it with a study guide that is a simplistic tool that you can take to your church pastor and say, hey, I want to teach this. I want to teach this group. I want to create this circle or this community group that bonds us together through something similar that we're going through. And we've seen that spread all over really all over the world. We've had community groups all over. And the number of people who have reached out that said, hey, I'm interested. And we always say, like, if it's not there, create it.
Man,
if it comes on your
church,
heart.
I'm not just saying this to you because I'm a podcast. Like, I mean this. Every church needs one of your groups in it, if not multiple, because one of the biggest challenges in the church is blended families.
Yeah.
And there are so many, and unfortunately, some people are a little ashamed of that. And if they'll just realize, listen, I'm not that different than a lot of other people in my church, and I can have people around me going through the same things. And so, if you're a pastor listening, I recommend talking to these guys and getting a group because it's this guy, he needs it.
Well, I love that you said that, Wade, and this is one of the unfortunate things about my experience growing up. As I grew up in that church, that if you were divorced, that you were asked to leave. And it's hard for us to kind of conceive this, and I've been very vocal and passionate about the idea of what nobody likes divorce. God hates divorce. God hates that it causes pain. But we are people, and sin causes divorce, and
100%.
And we are there in that space, and it happens. But we also have a God of redemption. We also have a God of forgiveness. We also have a God that says, man, I still love you. I'm still 100%. For you. I'm still for your family. I'm still for your children. Yeah. And so I say this with all due respect to anybody who's out there. But if we can celebrate prison ministry, we can celebrate blended family ministry.
Yes.
And I've been at that church who rises to their feet and applauds prisoners who turn their life to Jesus. I have no doubts that God can be as redeeming to blended families
100%.
And people who have messed up before. And a lot of people who are in divorce, they didn't cause the divorce. They were, they were a recipient of something.
So I can't forget that we're all sinners, man. We're all broken.
Yeah.
And the minute we start looking down on others because of something like that, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and I think, and again, I think if pastors, and I will say I am very encouraged with pastors that I speak with. Every pastor that I've spoke to about this topic has been obviously identified the problem and said, hey, we know we need to minister to this group. Yeah. This is an important group that we're involved with. And really what we're trying to do is, generational cycles of divorce are very real.
Yeah.
And second marriage divorces are at a higher rate than first marriage divorces. And I will say this to anybody listening, divorce inside the church is the same outside the church.
It is.
It's the same, resembling percentage. So how do we equip those folks?
Yeah.
How do we teach them at a certain point, like, hey, there's a way to do marriage, and God's design for it is very perfect. And if you do it this way, you have a 100% chance of success, and future generations are going to be changed. And I think it's just, I feel for pastors. And the reason I do is that the amount of things that are on their plate is immeasurable. I mean, it's so many things.
Yeah.
And that's why Blended Kingdom Families is a great resource. It does come right alongside you, provides you the things that you need. And it's been vetted. It's been it's been checked against so much, oversight that I think you can feel confident in teaching.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't come from a blended family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a blended family currently. I hope to not.
Mm-hmm.
But with a resource like this, I can still minister to them.
Sure.
And that's the key, I think.
Yeah.
I think that we've got to use the resources around us that are available to us. People like you guys that have, like you said, you vetted this. You guys are counselors. I mean, you know what you're talking about. And so it's something as easy, we have to be able to, in all of our groups and all of our ministries, we have to be able to reach hopefully everybody in our church.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the experience, like I don't have that experience, well, I've got people and I've got a resource that can help me in that process. And so, because we need them all in community.
And I think if you're a pastor or if you're curious, I think there are people inside your congregation that are more than willing to lead this kind of group. And we're going to create community. We started this podcast talking about the importance of community and maybe the way people bond, but also, this is a blended family podcast.
Yeah.
And we have people, if you're listening to this, I always assume people who listen to this are very active in what's going on in their life. And so I always encourage them, like, if you don't have one, start one.
Yeah.
If you feel ill-equipped, join the club.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know about you, but there's so many things that I've been tasked to do, and I'm saying I am not equipped to do 100%. This. I don't have the, maybe you feel like you don't have the education, or I don't have the experience, or I don't have the support.
Yep.
But if God puts it on your heart to say, why don't you just try?
Yeah.
I remember when Vanessa came to me and said, hey, we're going to start a blended family ministry. I'm going to tell you guys, I was not the guy who was like, that's exactly what we should do.
Normally when God calls you to it, that's the response.
Yeah. I'm grateful he called Vanessa.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I trust my wife, but I was not in the frame of mind to be like, this is what I want to do.
Yep.
So,
but the same way when I was called to be a pastor.
Exactly.
Because the enemy reminds us of the reasons we know ourselves.
Yeah.
And the enemy reminds us of why we probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And speaking to, the people sitting right there that you're like, I shouldn't lead a group. Because you're saying that, you probably should.
Yeah.
Because it's not about you. You know what I'm saying? The minute we think that we should be doing something is when we probably need some humility.
Yeah.
And the minute we say, look at Moses. Yeah. Moses, he's going to deliver the Israelites. Mm-hmm. And yet he's got response after response after response of why he shouldn't. And he was the man chosen. So God, we know this, but God is always picking people that don't think too highly of themselves because he wants the credit.
Well, and I was doing some podcasting earlier and I had this thought, and I didn't say it in the last podcast. I'm going to say it in this one. It was the idea of people who have doubts about what they should do, or even doubts about, how they conduct their marriage. And the thought came to me and said, there are people who have reserved spots in heaven that are waiting for you to say yes to them.
Oh, yes.
Think about the concept of your yes. And when you talk about generational changes, and you think about, God sitting up there going, man, I got a spot for this guy. And I know you're going to say yes to this. But if you'll say yes now, this spot,
getting fired up, man.
This spot. And it will, we have that power to change generations.
We do.
And I think that, by being in obedience, by stepping into the uncomfortableness of whatever is uncomfortable for you, by uncomfortableness, we grow. Yeah. By uncomfortableness, we step out and say, okay, God, I don't know exactly why or what I'm doing. I may not be very good at it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to step out in obedience. I've met countless leaders, and I will say this, countless, that I'm looked at and I've said, man, you do this?
Yeah.
Like just my
because they were willing.
Yeah. And I'm like, and it's like, I know that I'm maybe not qualified, or, I know that I may not be the best speaker. I may not be the best reader. I may not be the best singer. I don't know what that is. But I'm just going to be obedient to say, God, if you're calling me to this, I'm going to step into it. And I don't know if, I may not reach 10 million, 100 million people, and I may reach one.
Yeah.
And that may be what I'm called to do.
Well, you talked about our church at Victory Church, our lead pastor, John Chessie. He just preached a message on this little by little. And I think at times we get overwhelmed. I'm a kind of all in or all out personality, just my personality. So, but what that can do at times is I can think of all the reasons why maybe I shouldn't do it because I don't have everything right now.
Yeah.
But the truth is, nobody does.
No.
When you started this ministry or any business you started, when we started the Grapevine campus, you have to go little by little.
Yeah.
And I was just talking with him on the phone. It's little by little. You know, it's stepping into a group and not knowing whether you're comfortable doing it.
One of the coolest quotes I've ever, or one of them, I've heard a lot of quotes in my life, but one of the ones that stuck with me was a quote. I think it was Steve Jobs who said it. He said, "Everything you experience was created by somebody no smarter than you."
Oof.
And wait, think about this for a second. Like, and I know we're getting a little bit, kind of really big picture here.
Sure.
But when I think about the things that man has done,
yeah,
we've stepped on the moon. We've created electric cars. We can transplant a heart.
Yeah.
We can do all these things, and at some point, the person who created that
wasn't that much smarter.
Was just sitting there going, "I have no idea what I'm doing."
Yeah.
It's not like they woke up out of the womb and said,
right there,
"I'm a brilliant." I look at even like Steve Jobs or somebody like that, created the iPhone, transformed the world.
Has no.
At some
doesn't know
point,
what he's doing.
He was a 13-year-old kid. He
Yeah.
was a 12-year-old kid. He was. So what can your yes do for whatever God has planned for you?
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
But
there's a quote that stuck with me for years. It was Craig Rochelle, Craig,
Craig.
And he said, I was on staff there for a number of years before Victory Church, and I was in an all staff, and I remember I was just a young guy with big aspirations, big dreams, always kind of been that way. And he said, you'll overestimate what you'll do in the short run, but you'll underestimate how God will use a lifetime of faithfulness in the long run.
Ooh.
And that stuck with me so many times because there's been those seasons. I'm 45 now, but there was in my 30s. Here I was, when I heard that, I was in my 20s with these big aspirations. And there were moments in my 30s of real, just kind of, as a pastor, just going, am I making a difference? Like, should I be doing something different? Like, is this really my calling? But as I've looked back, and hopefully we'll do this again at some point. As I look back, I've seen over and over and over how God has used little step after little step after little step. But it takes, like what you're saying, sometimes it's just someone saying, okay, I'll lead a group.
Yeah.
There's no one else doing it in my church. I would prefer not to.
Yeah.
But my church needs it. Why not? Why not me?
Or your wife may be encouraging you.
Yeah.
Say it this way. Yeah. Sometimes you don't get the idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes your wife gives it to you.
That's it.
I'm going to kind of close this time, and there's a picture, and you've probably seen this video. I've seen several of them, but every time I see it, it tugs everything I have. And it's the picture of the old couple that's sitting there, and it's talking about, basically it kind of spans out and says, hey, we met, 65 years ago. And then it starts spanning to their kids, their grandkids, their great kids. And all of a sudden, this picture of two people turns into a picture of like 100 people.
Wow.
Their obedience day after day after day after day taught the importance of faith, marriage, commitment. And they may not see every fruit of this.
No.
But if you go and when you start thinking about generations, and they talk about it in the Bible a lot. They give this picture of 1,000 generations.
Yeah.
1,000 generations.
Yeah.
Wait, that is so many people.
So much bigger than us.
It's so much bigger. It's bigger than anything we'll ever see, ever feel.
Yep.
And it all starts with one step of obedience.
Yep.
And one of the things that we want to encourage you, and I want to encourage you just specifically, is to find a church and find community and find where you can step in obedience to say, how can I impact the kingdom?
Yeah.
You can be more than a participant in church. There are times when you need to be a participant.
Right,
You
exactly.
just need to sit back and you need to be fed, and that's what church is there for.
Yep.
But in today's world, and if you watch the headlines, everybody's kind of coming after the church and saying, man, and that's not what it is. That's not what it's about.
No.
It's about finding somebody who can encourage you. And if you're in this area and you like, hey, I don't know how many times I've met people like, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church.
Yeah.
I would just encourage you to take a step of faith and say, hey, listen, let's find something, whether that's that local church that's down the road, Or if you're like, hey, I want to find something that somebody, recommends, Victory is an amazing place. John is
incredible.
Well, he's just the guy. I mean, and he's not the guy.
Same guy
every day.
Yeah, he'd be the same guy right here that he is on stage.
Yeah, every day.
And he's got incredible teachings.
Him and I are going to be doing some podcasting tomorrow together.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's that guy, and he's got a great family, and he's not perfect, and he'll tell you he's not.
Oh, 100%.
But obedience and steps, it's just one step at a time of saying, hey, what can I do to change generations?
Yeah, I love that.
And I love that there are pastors like Wade who are sitting there on the ground and saying, hey, let me help. And so I'm thankful for you.
I appreciate
your work. Yeah. I'm optimistic about what the future holds.
Me too, man.
Because I don't know what the next 10 or 20 years hold, but let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
But thank you so much for being on the podcast and encouraging people.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Love it. Guys, thank y'all so much for joining. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is a little different from our normal podcast. It's just, again, two guys just hanging out talking. I didn't feel like it was just you and I just talking together.
I know. Love it.
Versus talking to the audience so much. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's encouraged you. I hope it's ignited in you something to go out and take a step of obedience and find that opportunity to be in community. Guys, hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Hey friends, so glad you were here with us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can find more resources from Blended Kingdom Families at blendedkingdomfamilies.com. Join us again next time as we talk about more blended family topics. Be blessed in all that you do, and remember, nothing will be impossible with God.